Keyaru was a lonely, miserable orphan who was constantly abused by the higher UP because of his skill. However, everything changed when he received the world and abused his abusers in revenge. In the new world, while he harvests fruits in the forest, one particular day, he suddenly hears a voice in his head that tells him to obtain the sight of the spirits. He wonders what this is, but starts to wander further into the forest, like a zombie, and soon reaches a lake where a spirit suddenly emerges from the water. She introduces herself as a star spirit and asks him what he desires, to which he replies that he wants the sight of the spirits that see all things. She immediately comes closer to him and kisses his right eye. Suddenly, he experiences a flashback to his previous life, when he was a healer who had the power to revive and heal the injured. However, he was used as a slave by the nobles in battles and constantly drugged till he became useless to himself. During their final battle against the Demon King, when his masters got damaged and were expecting his useless ass to heal them, he rebelled and chose to fight the Demon King by himself. He could rebel because he had gained the skill of drug resistance the year before the battle, so he wasn't influenced by the heavy drugs they used on him again. Flare, the master he hated the most, told him this was useless because he didn't know how to fight, but he shocked her when he suddenly charged at the demons and began to isekai them. His healing power actually came with the ability to relive the experiences of everyone he healed, and through this, he could imitate their techniques and make them into his own. He soon came face to face with the Demon King, who demanded to know who he was, and he identified himself as a hero of recovery. He charged at her, and despite all her attacks, he penetrated them constantly, healing himself as he got hit, until he finally reached her and removed the core of her heart, the Philosopher's Stone. Flare congratulated him for doing a good job and asked him to take the stone from him, but he refused. He told her he wanted to heal this corrupt world and go back to the time before he met her. He finally told her that he would be sure to take everything from her if they met once again, when in the new world he was about to create. And then he immediately activated the stone and restarted the world back to the present. He thanks the Star Spirit, which marks the beginning of his villain arc. Following this, his birthday came and he was chosen as a hero, just like in his previous life, while still retaining the status of a healer. So from then onward, he starts to feed on every crack he can find like a moron, so he can gain the needed resistance against what Flare is predicted to do to him in the future. One day, Flare appears in his village, and because he is a hero, he is taken back to the Imperial capital to serve a greater purpose. On getting to the beautiful city, the idiot tries to raise her up with a cheesy pickup line he learned on Discord and says, "She is so beautiful that she is almost ugly." He soon meets the king, and upon checking his stats with his green eye, he realizes he is like a monster, so he must be wary of him if he needs to make any move. They discover he is in the class of healers, which is exactly what the country has been looking for, so the king bestows on him the title Hero of Recovery. The king then says that since he has the power of a hero, he should be able to heal the Sword Saint, who lost her right arm in a fight against a high-ranking class of demons. Later that night, while he lies on his bed in his chamber, thinking about the whole event, a hot chick comes into the room and suddenly removes her plot armor. Before sitting on him, she quickly begins to develop plot with him until he finishes. The subsequent nights after this will be with different baddies, clapping him in different positions. But while they do this, he also steals their experiences with his imitation healing skill. A few days later, the Sword Saint named Koreha arrives at the castle,
and as soon as he meets her,
he casts his healing spell on her, regenerating her arm and instantly shocking her. However, he becomes very weak and collapses. Before she can say thank you, Flare and one stupid old man appears and tells her to go show herself to the king. Flare becomes disgusted by how weak he is and cancels him immediately, but the old man tells her that Keyaru is one of a kind, so they must keep him by all means. Flare says he is pretty worthless to them in battle, if this is how he faints every time he heals. She then tells the old man to use whatever he can on him, even if it destroys him, so he can be able to fulfill his role. Meanwhile, Keyaru, still conscious, is grateful that this douchebag is the same as she was in his previous life, so he can gladly have his revenge without mercy. The next day in his room, Keyaru starts to throw tantrums, like a baby refused his toys, saying he doesn't want to be a healer because of the horror he experiences whenever he does. Flare tries to persuade him with cheap talk, but bro ain't buying that crap and insists that he is never doing this again. She pretends to be sympathetic and tells him she wouldn't force him to do what he doesn't want, so she leaves with the old man. But bro knows his past too well to fall for her cheeky act of sympathy twice. A maid soon arrives with a cup of tea from Flare to sympathize with him, and even though he knows it is drugged, He takes it, causing him to faint. Immediately afterward, he is woken up in a cell with a punch to his disgusting face by one of the guards named Renard, who begins to torture him for defying Flair's orders. The old man enters the cell to give him more portion of the drug, and from then onward, several freakies visit him every night to get cultured with him while also drugging him. Even shameless men who want to level up their abilities forcefully put his meat to good use without caring about him during this time. They continue to overuse him in the day to heal people, even though he is exhausted and feeling terrible pains. And in the night, those baddies won't leave his meat alone. However, Keyaru has prepared for all this beforehand and only awaits the day his tolerance level will reach a threshold where he will awaken one night after Flair finishes drugging him as usual. She breaks the bottle on his head and heads out of the cell. However, Keyaru suddenly regains his mind and awakens, completely overcoming the influence of the drug. Then, he immediately realizes that the time to carry out his revenge has come. Meanwhile, as she leaves, Flair perceives something strange, but she dismisses it and takes her leave. Over the next few days, Keyaru eavesdrops on the soldiers and gathers several pieces of information from them, waiting for the perfect time to strike. On a particular night, he discovers that the king is on a trip, and then he breaks his chains and escapes from prison. As soon as Flair hears, she becomes concerned and wonders how the heck he escaped. However, Renard manages to catch him and brings him to her. He then tells Flair that Keyaru said something that should not be ignored. Hearing this, Flair invites him to her chambers. And as soon as they get there, Renard immediately unalives her guards and then strips her into her birthday suit. She is surprised and wonders what has come over him, but he smirks and transforms into Keyaru. Shocking her, he breaks one of her fingers and tells her if she can remain quiet while he breaks all 10, he will end his revenge, and if not, he will continue. She immediately agrees to this and bears all the pain. However, as soon as Keyaru finishes breaking them, he heals them and starts all over, causing her to scream in pain. Following that, he takes her to her bed and prepares to destroy her with his mighty weapon. She tries to run, but realizes that he has incapacitated her, so she starts to wriggle on the floor trying to escape. However, he catches up with her, grabs a metal rod and puts it inside fire. Before asking her to choose between this rod and that rod, she starts to beg for that rod, and after making her beg for a while, he destroys her afterward. He erases her memory and changes her face. He takes her with him and escapes, leaving behind a corpse that he had turned into Flair.
Subscribe.